I'm just wondering, because if you've lobbied everyone within the GNU itself, which would then collapse the GNU in its form and fashion, everybody outside the GNU, and then to create another government and parliament with the EFF and the MK is what you think would possibly be at play here. Is that not counter what it is that you're trying to do? Would that not be counterproductive?
You know, you make me laugh. All Cyril Ramaphosa's words are absolutely hollow. They mean absolutely nothing. And we will show him that we will not tolerate that level of hypocrisy and double standards, and that we don't see very much difference between him and Paul Mashatile and the corrupt RET faction anymore.
Why not change it then from the inside? Why not be part of it, get into it and actually try to show that you're trying to make some developments and not make it what you're calling an ultimate sham here? Because not being part of this national dialogue, is that not shortchanging your constituents?
Not at all. Because we have been in this government and we've been trying to make a big difference in the government, and our ministers have certainly done that. But the president treats us with absolute contempt, as if we didn't and our numbers didn't actually put him in the presidency.
You were okay with the national dialogue when it was first announced, by the seams of it, and the budget that it then ultimately came with. But now the removal of Andrew Whitfield has sparked this up. Why the change now?
Well, the change now is because we can't sit by and do nothing. We have a statement of intent. The statement of intent says all decisions in government are taken by consensus. And if not by consensus, then by sufficient consensus. The president just ignores this all the time. We were never properly consulted about the national dialogue, and we said that from the beginning. And the double standards is nauseating from the ANC. They're prepared to fire someone because he did what he was supposed to do and the president didn't bother to answer him, but they're not prepared to fire corrupt cabinet ministers. And we are going to show them very plainly that we don't play those games.
So ultimately she's saying you're wanting to eat your cake, or rather have your cake and eat it too there. You want to be part of the GNU, but not part of the national dialogue, and then you ask for dialogue and you don't want to be part of it. Your response?
What a joke. I mean, we've been trying to dialogue with the ANC in the government from the beginning, and they flatly ignore us. That's why we have to go to court. And we promised South Africans that we would not let that happen. We're not going to make it easy for the ANC to ignore us by simply walking out. They're going to have to fire us, but we're very close to firing the president.
How does that benefit the same country you're looking to rebuild if you're saying you have the ability and the power to bring the government down? How is that helpful?
Well, it's helpful if we...
Guys, so you see this Gogo Zille, who Neil De Beer calls the Iron Lady. We really have to take this Gogo to Nigeria, because Nigerians are calling for politicians that, you know, are at the tip of their toes in demanding accountability from government officials. And you know, when I listen to IRONLADY Zille's arguments, especially in her interviews with these journalists, I'm really blown away, you know, with the articulation. I mean, how clearly she thinks and argues, especially at her age. Bro, this is a born politician. I would argue she's really born for she's born for what she does. And I'm so overwhelmed. I'm so you know, I'm so intrigued by the way she approaches some of these questions that are usually thrown to her in these interviews. Because right now, when you listen to Gogo Zille, it almost appears as though this firing of Andrew Whitfield was done in such a way that he didn't violate what she calls the ministerial handbook. So she argues that there's a ministerial handbook that, you know, many ANC officials have violated many times. And, you know, we know that according to the prerogatives of the president, there's a power that is given to him. I think this is a power of all powers that is actually on him to fire anyone, you know, at certain point or certain instances. All right. So Gogo Zille is actually arguing that, you know, he hasn't used that power to fire the likes of Tembi Similani. I think one of the ANC official who, I don't know where I saw the video, was argued that she was caught lying or something like that. but then he was quick to fire Andrew Whitfield. And she argues that in a way, I think I want you guys to watch this interview in its full because it's really powerful. She argues that in her own understanding, Andrew didn't violate the ministerial handbook, yet he was fired. But then the ANC members who have actually violated the ministerial handbook over and over again have either been reshuffled in the cabinet or, still left in government. So this is her argument. And, many times when I was really waiting as well to really hear what would happen after the 24-hour ultimatum that John Steinhuisen actually, vociferously gave to the ANC and President Ramaphosa to either refute the firing of Andrew Whitfield or probably do something, to compensate that firing, either to fire Thembi Semelane or maybe some other ANC official. But that didn't come. And so I was really, just like many other people were thinking, maybe this would be the end of the GNU. What was crafted by the DA, for me, looking from an outside, I think it was a masterpiece, all right? Because this whole thing with the national dialogue, I've seen some of your comments on this channel. Many of your comments argued that, empty threats by the DA once more and all of that. But when I saw that move, I thought it was a really tactical move because at the end of the day, this was even before the Africana started, the Africana refugee program got into full force. I think President Ramaphosa had been speaking about the need of a national dialogue. There's been so much division in the land, so much racial divisions, and, a lot of people getting angry. I think that was the time we also had this whole notion with the way the whole kill the boer and kill the farmer argument really exploded in the air in South Africa. And so President Ramaphosa had this really soft part of his heart to really carry out a national dialogue. This was a major part of, I think, his agenda going forward before, the G20 handover to the United States. I think this is a major aspect of President Ramaphosa's initiatives, all right? So it came as a really tactical move for me, for the DA to really decide to extract themselves from that national dialogue, because it was a really, it's in a country like South Africa, when a president calls for a national dialogue and you don't have a representative of the second largest party in the GNU. I think the DA now is standing at 21%. And Gogo even argues that, President Ramaphosa is really there. I think they're really close to firing President Ramaphosa. This interview is loaded, guys. You have to watch it to the end. But she argues that the DA is close to firing the president. I think they're planning a motion of no confidence, against the president. I think the one against the mayor of Johannesburg survived, Morero, yeah. But I think they're planning towards that and trying to rally around who probably would be, would tally along. But there's been a lot of pushback against that. I think I saw the Kunene from the PA arguing that, they would not, they would support President Ramaphosa in case of any of these kind of things. Even Musi Maimane from Bosa argues that any kind of motion of no confidence would be seen as a sort of a political move that might not be necessary. This is me paraphrasing, but the DA is intent on that motion of no confidence. But at the same time, this move to really extract themselves from the national dialogue, bro, I think that's a really major blow to the plans of the ANC. And this was one of the questions that this journalist asked Gogo, and along the line in the interview they played this video, but I thought it was really interesting for me. I want you guys, let's watch this video quickly from she's the ANC spokesperson. She was interviewed by Mike Sham once. I'll be making a video on some parts of that interview where she spoke about, I think Mike Sham even tagged the video that investors can go elsewhere and all of that. But she's Malengi Bengu. I think she's the ANC spokesperson. And she had this to say about the DA being childish and being it's really funny for me that the DA is being childish by extracting themselves from national dialogue as a way to get back. This is not her. This is me now trying to really summarize what she was I think I'm hearing her saying that the DA seems to be childish by extracting themselves from the national dialogue as a way to get back at the firing of Andrew Whitfield. And for me, that was really bizarre, but it actually shows the importance and the weight of this kind of tactical move that the DA has actually taken. Because without a DA, a national dialogue in a racially diverse country like South Africa, bro, I don't really think it would make any sense. It wouldn't carry any water. And so with all the money involved in the investment, I think there's some millions of rand that has already been invested in carrying out that event, and the DA now standing their ground saying that they won't participate. I think that's a really big blow. That's how I read it from the outsider perspective. This is just a humble Nigerian trying to really analyze political movement in South Africa. But this, I think, is a big blow. So let's quickly listen to Bengu in how she tries to really articulate the DA's stand in excluding themselves from the national dialogue. And I'll be back for some final thoughts before Helen Zille gives it to us.
To threaten, and in this case to threaten the ANC, is now starting to fall on deaf ears, frankly, because it is so constant. The 48-hour ultimatum that was given, again, it was a threat. And of course, South Africans expected that today we'll be having a government of national unity that needs to be reconstructed. It did not come to that, but the threats continue. And I think walking away from dialogue on the part of the DA is really a sign of lack of maturity. Remember, it is the DA that is crisscrossing the courts over transformation legislation. The Bella Act, the Employment Equity Act of late, the land expropriation legislation, and the National Health Insurance one. Of course, they also went to court on the VAT increase. And these are people who are part of government. Some are ministers, some are deputy ministers. So they are actually part of government. They are supposed to be part of finding constructive solutions to some of the intractable challenges that South Africa is facing.
Yeah, you've heard it for yourselves, guys. So I think it's, for me, I just kept laughing throughout when I heard that, because at the end of the day, that's why I think politics in South Africa is both interesting and sensitive at the same time, because many actions have to be weighed, because as much as, like in Nigeria, for example, where we have a monolithic racial representation in government, all we have in Nigeria is a multi-ethnic representation, all right? So at the end of the day, when you carry the weight of the ethnicity versus the race, the way modern society has sort of like, articulated race, it seems to be that race seems to have more weight than every other form of representation. And whenever you speak about racism, it's clear. All right. And so in a multiracial society like South Africa, these kinds of firing have a tendency to send multiple messages that might not be the initial intention of the very perpetrator of that act. And so I think this is what's happening now with the interpretation of Andrew Whitfield. A lot of the minorities, white minorities in South Africa, they really feel so angry. First of all, there's been this building anger for the ANC. When you go through the comments on Kwazami, you can see I never knew that there was this much hatred for the ANC in South Africa. And really, I don't think many blacks in Africa, many Africans know about this much hatred and, arguments for decadence that has been put on the ANC. Many people do not know this detail about the ANC. So it was when I started this channel, I started to really see, whoa, the comments against the ANC are crazy, are really crazy. But to add to that now, this firing of Andrew Whitfield in the face of a prolonged complaints of mismanagement and maybe misdemeanor of many ANC officials, as I keep on hearing you guys complain on this channel, and also in the many other channels I've been seeing a lot of comments regarding the irresponsibility of many ANC officials and all of that. Bro, this move by the DA in chipping out of this ANC dialogue, you could hear it from Bengu arguing that the DA is childish and all of that. Even the interviewer, there's a way, that's why I want you guys to watch this interview. Gogo responds to the question by this interviewer who argues that, the DA has been asking for a dialogue, but now the dialogue has come, the DA is rejecting the dialogue and all of that. And the way Helen Zille gave it to this journalist, bro, I was shocked. This is a powerful interview. You guys have to watch till the end, and let's have a robust discussion in the comments. Share your thoughts. What do you think? Is the DA really doing well? How is the DA performing in its representative of the minorities? What do you think about the DA leaving this national dialogue and this whole thing with the firing of Andrew Whitfield? Let's listen to Helen Zille quickly and share your thoughts, guys, in the comments.
The Alliance says it will withdraw from the national dialogue and also lobby against the over 700 million rand process. This came after President Cyril Ramaphosa failed to meet the party's ultimatum to fire corruption-implicated ministers such as Thembi Simelane as well as Nobuhle Ngabane. Now, the party also says withdrawal from the government of national unity was never on the table, but a motion of no confidence against President Cyril Ramaphosa was indeed discussed and is now firmly in frame. DA Federal Council Chairperson Helen Zille joining us now for that discussion. Mazile, thank you so much for the time. Appreciate it. Before I kick things off very quickly, earlier on we had a poll. I know it's not going to necessarily be fully representative of everything, but we asked our viewers just what it means to them then. And it's on our screens now. The DA says it will snub and lobby against the national dialogue. What is it that people think about it? 61% of the people that responded to it said it was just more empty threats then and that it wouldn't make any difference ultimately. What is your sentiment around that kind of commentary? Even if it comes from just a few people, doesn't, of course, is not representative as we said. But what do you think of that commentary perhaps from some?
Well, whatever the polls were, they would have all been much wiser than us, as we know. We're very used to that. If we had brought the government down and brought the EFF and MK into power, the poll would have looked very different. You would have said, was it worth bringing the ANC and the EFF and MK into a coalition to replace the DA-ANC coalition? The polls would have been equally scathing, in fact, much more scathing of that. So the truth is, these polls are always amongst people who always know better and who often don't have any of the facts at their disposal. In this case, the national dialogue is very dear to President Ramaphosa's heart. He's invested a lot in it. I believe that it's just a cover for the ANC's 2026 election campaign, so I've been very opposed to it from the start. But it was a very important thing for the DA to say we're not participating in it. And if the DA, as the second largest party in the country, doesn't participate in it, the whole thing becomes a sham.
But why not
the whole thing
it?
becomes a hollow exercise.
Why not change it then from the inside? Why not be part of it, get into it and actually try to show that you're trying to make some developments and not make it what you're calling an ultimate sham here? Because not being part of this national dialogue, is that not shortchanging your constituents?
Not at all. Because we have been in this government and we've been trying to make a big difference in the government, and our ministers have certainly done that. But the president treats us with absolute contempt, as if we didn't and our numbers didn't actually put him in the presidency, which in fact we did do. So if they treat us with that contempt inside the government, they will just walk all over us in the national dialogue, and we're not interested in that.
You were okay with the national dialogue when it was first announced by the seams of it and the budget that it then ultimately came with. But now the removal of Andrew Whitfield has sparked this up. Why the change now?
Well, the change now is because we can't sit by and do nothing. We have a statement of intent. The statement of intent says all decisions in government are taken by consensus. And if not by consensus, then by sufficient consensus. The president just ignores this all the time. We were never properly consulted about the national dialogue, and we said that from the beginning. I wrote three letters since July last year to Fikile Mbalula, who's my counterpart in the ANC. To this date, not one of them has been replied to formally. I've had some meetings with Fikile Mbalula, which I raised the issue, but he's never replied to the letters, and that's exactly what the president did to Andrew Whitfield. He applied to go overseas. It was a private trip. It had nothing to do with representing the government. And the handbook only says that you should apply to the president if you're going on government business. But even though he wasn't going on government business, he did apply, and the president never responded. And to this day, he hasn't responded. So in fact, Whitfield did exactly what he was supposed to do. and the president did not do what he is supposed to do. And the double standards is nauseating from the ANC. They're prepared to fire someone because he did what he was supposed to do and the president didn't bother to answer him, but they're not prepared to fire corrupt cabinet ministers. And we are going to show them very plainly that we don't play those games.
At the same time, though, Andrew Whitfield did himself say he did perhaps err in all of this, though, in not seeking permission or having gotten permission first before making this trip. So does that not go counter what it is you're making note of there then? And in the same notion, is basically if he was removed because he didn't do this, is it not still the right message? I mean, the president doesn't actually ultimately have to explain himself, but he did anyway to help, to show that he's actually trying to give some dialogue. Is that still not sufficient in your book?
The only thing that we've got to go on are the rules that are written down. And these rules are written down in the ministerial handbook. So many of President Ramaphosa's own colleagues, Simelane and the whole range of others, many, have violated the ministerial handbook over and over again. Yet he says, it's my prerogative, you've got to ask me permission, which Andrew did, and we can only go on the letter of the ministerial handbook. But he decides to overlook all the violations of the handbook by the ANC ministers and fire Andrew for what was not a violation of the handbook, but which the president claims was a violation of the handbook. So it shows that going overseas is more serious to the president than being corrupt and stealing public money and lying to Parliament.
Yeah. Just very quickly, we have the ANC spokesperson that we spoke to yesterday, Mahlengu Pengu Mitsiri, saying that the DA's repeated threats against the ANC are beginning to lose effect. Just wanted to play you that clip and perhaps get your response to that.
To threaten, and in this case to threaten the ANC, is now starting to fall on deaf ears, frankly, because it is so constant. The 48-hour ultimatum that was given, again, it was a threat. And of course, South Africans expected that today we'll be having a government of national unity that needs to be reconstructed. It did not come to that, but the threats continue. And I think walking away from dialogue on the part of the DA is really a sign of lack of maturity. Remember, it is the DA that is crisscrossing the courts over transformation legislation. The Bella Act, the Employment Equity Act of late, the land expropriation legislation, and the National Health Insurance one. Of course, they also went to court on the VAT increase. And these are people who are part of government. Some are ministers, some are deputy ministers. So they are actually part of government. They are supposed to be part of finding constructive solutions to some of the intractable challenges that South Africa is facing.
So ultimately, she's saying you're wanting to eat your cake, or rather have your cake and eat it too. There, you want to be part of the GNU, but not part of the national dialogue, and then you ask for dialogue, and you don't want to be part of it. Your response?
What a joke. I mean, we've been trying to dialogue with the ANC in the government from the beginning, and they flatly ignore us. That's why we have to go to court. We only go to court because they flatly ignore us in government, where we are a crucial partner, where we bring the numbers to keep Cyril Ramaphosa in power. They flatly ignore us. They carry on as if they've got a 51% majority, which they don't have. And we are not going to make it easy for them to bring the EFF and MK into government. If the EFF and MK come into government, every single person in this country will suffer. The value of the rand will go through the floor. Investment will be withdrawn. Your pension will be worth a fraction of what it's worth now. And unemployment will skyrocket. That is what we know will happen if the EFF and MK come into government. And we promised South Africans that we would not let that happen. We're not going to make it easy for the ANC to ignore us by simply walking out. They're going to have to fire us, but we're very close to firing the president. Very close to firing the president.
I'm actually going to... Yeah, I'm actually going to go into that motion of no confidence in a second, but just very quickly, in another interview yesterday, you said, and I quote, "We have the power in our numbers because of the voters to bring the government down, and we will use that power." My two questions is, one, how? And two, how does that benefit the same country you're looking to rebuild if you're saying you have the ability and the power to bring the government down? How is that helpful?
Well, it's helpful if we are just merely puppets in the government of national unity. We don't plan to be treated that way. We have a statement of intent that the ANC has ignored at every turn. We're fighting for it to be respected and implemented. And if the ANC continues as if they have an overall majority, we will show them that they do not. And if Cyril makes himself indistinguishable from Paul Mashatile and the corrupt RET faction, we will also indicate to them that we have the numbers to bring down the president. And we will use those numbers. We came very, very close to doing so. A motion of no confidence was actually in the frame. And a motion of no confidence would bring the president down and it would bring the government down. And we know what the consequence of that would be, but we will not be treated in the way that the president chooses to treat us, with hypocrisy and with double standards. That is why we're using our numbers in Parliament to vote against the budget votes of those implicated ministers, so they won't get their budget votes through. That'll be an indication that we will use our numbers against the ANC when we have to.
Yep.
And we are using our numbers and our influence to turn the national dialogue into a total sham and to prevent the ANC from using public money, 700 million rands worth of public money, to drive what is their disguised election campaign.
Helen, one has to ask, however, how would a motion of no confidence work and succeed for you? You need 201 votes at the very least, even if all the coalition partners voted with you. It only brings that number to 127. Who else would you lobby?
It brings that number to 197. We've done our sums very carefully.
So who have you added to that?
We've done our lobbying. Well, who do you think? I mean, look at the composition of Parliament. We've added to the ANC's tally everyone who might possibly vote with the ANC. And we know who they are. We know exactly who they are. So it brings us to 197. That brings us to a whisker of 201 seats. 201 votes. It brings us to a whisker of that. And we know that even when there's a three-line whip, all the ANC MPs are never in Parliament. They've always got something else to do. The ANC always falls short on the numbers. We know that.
So this is including... So this would include other members who are not part of the GNU then, is that correct?
Of course.
Yeah.
When you go to Parliament, everyone's voting.
All right. I'm just wondering, because if you've lobbied everyone within the GNU itself, which would then collapse the GNU in its form and fashion, everybody outside the GNU, and then to create another government and parliament with the EFF and the MK is what you think would possibly be at play here. Is that not counter what it is that you're trying to do? Would that not be counterproductive?
You know, you make me laugh. Our number one choice has been to make a government of national unity work, even though we didn't get enough cabinet seats, even though the president, against our agreement, inflated the cabinet to give more cadre deployment posts to the ANC, even though they have never respected the statement of intent. We've tried to make the government of national unity work.
Yeah. Okay.
If the president is going to continue ignoring the fact that we have the numbers, we will take the next step. It's firmly in the frame. We're going to use our numbers. We're going to use our numbers in Parliament in the week ahead to show that we're going to vote down budget votes. And that will show exactly what we can do in a motion of no confidence in Parliament. That'll give an indication of where the votes actually lie and what we can do with those votes.
Okay. So you're asking to remove these ministers that you believe are corruption affiliated, etc., right? Why were you not asking for their removal before this happened?
We were. We keep on asking for the corrupt to be fired. But then suddenly one of our members is fired when he did nothing wrong, when the president can't answer his letters. And then we say, okay, that's it. That proves hypocrisy. That proves double standards. That proves that the ANC doesn't care about corruption. That proves that all Cyril Ramaphosa's words are absolutely hollow. They mean absolutely nothing. And we will show him that we will not tolerate that level of hypocrisy and double standards, and that we don't see very much difference between him and Paul Mashatile and the corrupt RET faction anymore.
So what will it take now for a motion of confidence? Are you waiting for one more mistake, one more ultimatum, one more element from the president who clearly is saying that he will exercise his powers according to the Constitution?
What we want is the statement of intent to be respected. We want clause 19 and especially 19.3 to be given an institutional mechanism to work. We've been talking about this for a year. I would have insisted that it was in the original agreement, but we had to reach agreement according to the country's constitution within 2 weeks of the election. So we put it in there. And you know what? Fikile Mbalula signed that document with me. His signature isn't worth the paper it is written on.
Helen Zille, Federal Council Chairperson of the Democratic Alliance.